Hello everyone, my name is Tamim Delwar. I am creating this video for ethical hacking. Please be advised that the information that is shown in this video is only for educational purposes. Thank you. Now, today I will be showing you how to go ahead and use John the Ripper and Johnny for password cracking on Windows XP hashes. We will actually go ahead and discuss some key concepts that we should be aware of when going and performing any form of password cracking. Moreover, I will also demonstrate how to hack into a Windows XP machine using Kali Linux and Metasploit to go ahead and extract the SAM file which contains the hash documents for the password cracking phase. So before we go ahead and actually do the demonstration, I would actually prefer that I go over some of the key concepts that we should know when we are doing any form of password cracking, such as what is encryptions, cryptography, decryptions, different types of attacks that particular tools such as John the Ripper or Cain Enable will actually utilize when. We currently live in the cyber world, where most of our sensitive information is actually out there on the internet, where many people can just simply go and view them via social media. However, there are certain things that we don't really want others to know about us. For example, one of the main things are our bank account informations. But what's actually preventing others from getting access to our bank account information? Well, the first line of defense, and actually one of the best forms of defense from hackers trying to take access of your bank account information or other sensitive information, is actually simply just a very strong password. A strong password is the first line and the best defense that you have against unwanted entry. A strong password prevents others from just simply guessing a password, so it is highly suggested not to use extremely weak passwords such as the word password or information that is very common such as your birth date, where a hacker, if through social engineering, could unravel this mystery by simply finding out your birth date and entering it, and they will gain access to that account. So a very strong password is the first line and probably the best method of defense from unwanted entry into your personal and private information. Now, cryptography is the art of secret messages or encoding documents so others can't understand. Now, cryptography uses algorithms to encrypt a cipher document from a plain text document. It also uses an algorithm to decrypt that same ciphertext back into plain text, where the individual can go ahead and then understand what the text actually represented. There are various forms of cryptography. You have transposition, which change in the position or order of letters or words. This one doesn't really rely on the length of the password, and it's mainly based on probabilities. Now, the problem with transposition is that anyone can break it if they can key together the frequency of the letters. Now, another method of cryptography or encryption is the substitution method, where this simply takes various words or groups of words and then just swaps places with them, and it'll jumble up a simple word, and then to regain the original message is to just undo the process of replacing the words back to their original positions. This is also not a very form of encryption, because people can also find a pattern in this where which words are being replaced with what words. Another form of encryption that I don't have listed here is the ASCII shift, is where you take a character and then convert it into its ASCII equivalent and then simply do a shift on the ASCII table. So for example, the letter A would at this point, if you do a large enough shift, will become the number 1. And to simply get the message back, the original message, is to undo the process and reverse the shift back to its original position, and then you have decrypted the message from its encrypted stage. Now, there are different forms or methods of encryption. You have the symmetric key encryption. Sometimes this is also called a secret key algorithm. This form of encryption actually utilizes the same key. So the same key is used for both encryption and decryption. Let's give a likely scenario of this use. Is you have 2 points, point A and point B. The person in point A wants to send a message to person in point B. They go ahead and use this one key to encrypt the information and then send the message to point B, but realize that the person in point B does not have the key to decrypt this message. They then go ahead and send a key along with the message to be sent to person B so they can decrypt the message. Hypothetically speaking, you have a person in point C who intercepts this message, but not only do they get an encrypted file, but they also get the encryption key to decrypt that file. The weakness of this method is the fact that it's simply like sending a message in a suitcase where on top of the suitcase you have the key that opens the suitcase. It's not very secure. However, this system is faster when compared to the asymmetric key algorithm. Now, the asymmetric key algorithm is also called the public key algorithm, mainly because there are actually two keys. You have one which is the public key and you have one which is the private key. Now, the public key is usually given out to others to use for the purpose of encrypting documents, and then the private key is held by one person who will then just use it to decrypt the ciphertext. Now, let's take that same scenario again, where you have person in point A and point B. The person in point A will want to send a message to person in point B. They go ahead and they encrypt the document with the public key, and they pass the message over to person in point B. But this time they don't necessarily have to send the key, but let's say they do. They send the key over. And hypothetically speaking, once again, a person in point C is intercepting the message. That person gets an encrypted file and, let's say, the key, but they are not able to decrypt that encrypted file because the public key is only valid when encrypting a file. The private key must be used to decrypt that file because there are two different keys, each serving a different purpose. This is a much more secure approach to actually encrypting documents. But as stated again, this is a fairly bit slower process than the asymmetric method. The symmetric method. Now, the tools that are used when we are talking about password cracking, I'm just listing a few over here. So we have Cain and Abel, we have OpCrack, and John the Ripper and Johnny. Now, the difference between John the Ripper and Johnny is this, that Johnny is the GUI version of John the Ripper. In this tutorial, I will show you how to use Johnny and John the Ripper. The difference is not that great. Johnny is fairly easier than John the Ripper, but both of them are fairly user-friendly. Now, there are a few types of attacks that hackers will utilize when attempting to crack a password hash. So you have the first method, which is the dictionary attack, which uses a list of possible passwords and simply just matches the hash file to these passwords and attempts to guess if the password is correct or not. Now, obviously, the main flaw here is that this form will not be able to crack the password if the password is not in the list originally. And this is not a good method when attempting to crack complex passwords. This is okay if you're attempting to crack very simple passwords. For example, a person's birthday or the word password or very common phrases that people use as passwords. Then the second method you have is the brute force attack. Now, a brute force attack will crack a password if given enough time. However, if you have multiple combinations of words and letters and numbers and symbols in your password, otherwise meaning that you have a very strong password, the brute force attack can take anywhere between 1400 days to 1400 years. I don't think there will be any hacker who's willing to wait 1400 years to crack your password. If they survive, I would be very impressed. Now, however, if you have a very simple password, the brute force attack will crack it in a matter of seconds to minutes to hours. This attack will crack a password, and it is very slow when compared to the dictionary attack. Another thing that you should note when attempting to do a brute force attack, that this demands a lot of processing power from your computer. So this method is only as good as the equipment that you use it and the password that you use it against. Now, the passwords that we will be cracking in this tutorial are the LM hash files that are used by Microsoft Windows XP machines. Now, the LM files only cared about the first 14 entries to the password phrase. So if you had 15 entries, you would have one of two scenarios. Either the password would not be created, or two, the 15th entry would just get dropped. Now we can already see that you're limiting the amount of combinations that the password can hold to 14. This is not good. Not only that, but once you have the 14 entries of this password, this system would go ahead and then capitalize all the entries. Once again, you're dropping various combinations that were possible with the capitals and the uncapitalized versions of words. So once again, you dropped the amount of possible combinations that a brute force attack would require before it could crack it. So you're lowering the time that a brute force attack would need to crack one of these passwords. But to make matters worse, this system would also chop the 14 entries into two 7-character long segments, which would then get hashed. This is terrible because now not only do you have characters that are only capitalized, but you only have to do a brute force on 7 characters. The amount of combinations that is about like 69 to 7, and you only need to do that twice. So this is a major weakness on the LM hash files, and it makes a brute force attack fairly feasible, especially with the current technologies where our processors are able to crack these passwords within seconds to minutes to hours. It just depends how upgraded our systems are. So with these informations that I have shared with you, we're actually gonna just jump into the practical, where I will now show you how to gain access to a Windows XP machine via Kali Linux, extract the hash files from the SAM or the SAM files from the Windows XP machine, and then apply Johnny and John the Ripper to go ahead and actually crack these files to gain access to the passwords that will let us log into these Windows XP machines. Now, it should be noted that the Windows XP machine and the Kali Linux that I am using are both provided to me by Florida International University, and I am performing nothing illegal because all of this is for an educational purpose. So the information that you attain from here is purely for educational purposes. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is actually hack into the XP machine and then locate the SAM file and pass it on to the Kali machine, so we can then utilize John the Ripper or Johnny to crack the hash file for the passwords that will give us access to the XP machines using the credentials for the user. Now, the first step to this is to actually go ahead and launch MSF console from our terminal. I already went ahead and launched it because sometimes it takes a long time for the console to initialize, so we didn't have to wait on this one. Now in here, what we want to do is go ahead and specify the exploit we want to use and the parameters for that exploit, including the payload and the parameters that the payload will be using. So there's several exploits that we can utilize against this. Note that the XP machine that we are trying to hack into is actually the vanilla Windows XP with no service packs or any forms of patches. This is the original Windows XP that was released, so it is full of vulnerabilities. There are several exploits that you can utilize, but I'm going to stick to one particular exploit, and we're just going to go ahead and use that one. So to get started with the exploitation phase, we will just go ahead and use exploit Windows SMB MS08 067 net API, and then I will go ahead and expand this window so you can have a better look. Then the exploit terminal will go ahead and open up. Now we can go ahead and look at some of the options that are available to us through this exploit. To do that, we just simply type in show options, and this will show us the parameters that this particular exploit requires or is currently running on. Now, during this phase, when you're setting up the parameters of this, the most important parameter that we do need to set up is the R host, the remote host. The remote host is the host that we are trying to hack. So the XP machine is provided by Florida International University, and the Kali machine and the XP machine are both on the same network. Therefore, I can go ahead and remotely hack into the system utilizing the IP address of the remote host. So in my case, I'm just going to set our host to be 10.106.130.128, which is the IP address for that Windows XP machine. Now, we can look at the options one more time to see that the remote host is now working with that particular IP address, and that our exploit will actually try to enter using the remote port 445. So now, if we want to see the payloads, we can go ahead and type in show payloads, but that is a very exhaustive list, and we're just going to use a very particular payload. We're going to go ahead and use the MeterPeter payload. Now, why specifically MeterPeter? So MeterPeter is very powerful reverse shell that already has many built-in functionalities that are easily available to us. So instead of working from scratch or utilizing some other kind of payload, we'll just work with one that's already been that's already very convenient for us, which is MeterPeter. So to go ahead and set payload, we go set payload, Windows, MeterPeter, reverse TCP. And that sets our payload to be in the reverse TCP section. And now we're going to look at the options that are available to us and the parameters of this payload. And in this case, the two important parts of our payload, the important parameters of this payload, are the L host and the L port, which represent the local host and the local port. This is the IP address and the port that your machine, you as the hacker, will be utilizing. So the IP address will be your IP address, and the L port, or the local port, will be the port through which you receive the reverse shell terminal. So in this case, we're going to set the L host to be the IP address of my machine. In this case, is 10.106.130.30.33, and I'm going to change the local port to be 6666. Okay, now that we have everything set up, we can go ahead and continue the exploit. To launch the exploit, we just simply type in exploit, and this will go ahead and launch the MeterPeter exploit. Okay, now we have access into the Windows XP already. So to get some information regarding the Windows XP, to make sure that we actually are in there, we can type in sysinfo, and this gives us some of the generic information regarding the computer that we actually gained access to. So this is a Windows XP machine. It shows you the build number, the architecture, the system's language, and the location of the MeterPeter terminal. So now that we have access to this, what we want to do is actually get the hash files from here. To do that, we can just go ahead and type in hash dump, and boom, right there we have the username with the corresponding hash file that represents the password. So minimize this, and you want to create an empty document to transfer the hash files into. Double click this, go back to your terminal, and simply copy and transfer over the hash document into this plain text file, and go ahead and save this. Okay, you can now close that option out. You can close this terminal if you wish. I'm just going to go ahead and minimize this. And now is when we're going to go ahead and launch Johnny. Now we're going to use the GUI version for this phase. So for this application, I will demonstrate the usage of the GUI version of John the Ripper using Johnny. I'll crack these passwords. So go into Application, Kali Linux, Password Attacks, Password Attacks, Offline Attacks. Come on, Offline Attacks. And look, Johnny. Here's Johnny. Go ahead and launch it. Okay. Maximize the window. Open file password, hash file. Click open. So these are all the accounts that are on this hash file, and these are the hash equivalent of the passwords. And over here where the blank space is the passwords after the crack has been applied. So to start the attack, you can just go ahead and play start attack, and boom, here's the countdown to how much of the password has been cracked, and 100% of the password, the completion is 100%, and these are all the passwords. So administrator, the password for this one is password. Now remember that because you see this password to be in full caps, that's actually not the password, because as I stated earlier, the LM hash file capitalizes all the characters. So this password is essentially in lower caps. Guest has no password. HackMe has got hacked. Happy Hacker, and as you can see, you have all the passwords available to you. So you can widen this out, and you can go ahead and take a look at all the passwords right here. So now I'll just go ahead and demonstrate that I actually do have access to these users. I'll go ahead and launch the XP machine using remote desktop. So which one should we use? Okay, let's go ahead and go with the first one in the line. Admin. And as I stated, that the password is in lowercase. Password. Press OK. And boom, we have access to the Windows XP as the user administrator. So not only do we have access to this account, but we also have administrator privileges on this account. So we can do a lot of damage to this machine with this particular account. This is why a strong password is essential to protecting some of the most sensitive information that you may have, bank accounts or some social media that has particular images that you don't want others to see, or videos, or any kind of sensitive information that you don't want to give into the wrong hands. So this was a demonstration with the GUI version of John the Ripper. This was a remote hack onto a remote desktop, and I used Hashdump to retrieve all the hash passwords for the corresponding users, and then I cracked it using the GUI version of John the Ripper. The following tutorial will be utilizing Johnny, but we will also use the CLI version, or John the Ripper, to mount or simulate mounting of a Windows XP hard drive and then accessing the hard drive locally with your Kali Linux. So in this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and mount a Windows XP hard drive and access it using Kali Linux. The reason for this is when the operating system is running, the SAM file is normally protected. However, if you mount it onto a Kali machine and access the hard drive via the Kali machine, the operating system is not enabled, so the SAM file is not protected. In most cases, you may need to create a directory to where you want to create the mount point for the hard drive. I already have a directory for this, which is called MNT store, and the way you would create a directory is simply by typing in the command mkdir, then naming the directory, which would be /mnt/ let's call it store, but as you know, I already have this directory, so I don't need to create it again. So I'm going to use this directory as is, and this is the place where the hard drive is located on. To mount this, you would go ahead and type in mount/t, then enter the location of the mount point, which is the dev sdb1, and then you would point in the mount point, which is mnt/store. Now, this is not going to give me access to it because it's already been mounted. If I click enter, it'll give me an error saying that it was mounted already. Okay. Oh, sorry. You need to specify the file type, which is in this case is a Windows, so it would be the NTFS. Now it gives me the error that the mount is denied because it's already mounted. Now, to actually go ahead and access the hard drive, we will go ahead and change directories into it. So cd mnt store, list what's in here. Now we can go ahead and find that that is the value folder we want, and we'll just do cd windows /system 32 /config, and then ls, and that's the SAM file that we want. Now from here we can use bkhive to extract the system key and then we can get the hash files using samdump. So we'll run bkhive system, the file location and name that you would like the system to extract the information into, and I'll call it syskey.txt, save it into root. Okay, from here I'll go ahead and use samdump to sam the syskey file .txt, pipe it into this file. This is where the hash will be stored in, hash2.txt, and now we can go ahead and pull up I saved everything into the root, hash2 right here, and these are the hash files that came from that document. Now, I'm going to open up Johnny just so I can crack these passwords really fast. And I already have access to these passwords. Now, to run John the Ripper, on the other hand, we would go John, and this will show us the help for all the commands that John will take in. So the normal syntax for John the Ripper is displayed right here, which is John options on the password file. Now, this is an NT file. This is running on an LM file, but it has some NT on it too, so you can actually specify the format to be of NT. So here we'll run it John -- format equal NT, and then the location of the hash file root hash2.txt. Okay, and then John will wait while it attempts to crack these passwords. On the other hand, Johnny has actually already cracked all the passwords on this end. And that concludes our tutorial. I have shown you how to use John the Ripper and Johnny to hack into a Windows XP machine, extract the SAM hash files. Now, everything that I have taught you over here was for an educational purpose, so please don't do anything that is illegal in the future. Thank you.